So welcome to our viewers. Thank you for joining our webinar today, New Cloud Service Opportunities with S3 Object Storage and VMware Cloud Director. Joining us today are Chad Ordona, Sales Director, VMware VCPP Canada, Ingram Micro, Terry Swarn, Director of Sales, Canada Cloudian, and Grant Jacobson, Director of VMware Alliances Cloudian. Welcome, Chad, Terry, and Grant.
All right. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for the introduction. So thank you all for making it today in today's webinar regarding Cloudian. So thank you for that. And just to kick things off, a little bit about myself. Some of you may be familiar with who I am. I am pretty much the extended arm of the VMware Cloud Provider program at VMware, and your first point of contact regarding anything regarding the program. And with that, I'll pass it off to Terry.
Thank you very much, Chad and Jennifer. Good morning, folks across the country. My name is Terry Swarn. I'm the Director of Sales for Cloudian here in Canada, and I am your point of contact for all things Cloudian related. Grant.
Okay. Thanks, Terry. Grant Jacobson. I run the Alliance with VMware here at Cloudian. Thank you very much.
And with that, I will officially hand it off to Terry.
Thank you so much, Jen. Good morning again, everybody. So I'll give you a quick introduction here to Cloudian and why we feel this is an important webinar for you to attend, and thanks again for taking the time. Cloudian is excited to have been chosen by VMware for the VCB integration, and working together with Ingram, VMware, we're excited to be able to offer an OpEx delivery model of the Cloudian Hyperstore software. Making it, I think it aligns very, very nicely for the MSP model that most of you folks support, how you get paid, and it's the exact same way you pay for the consumption of our licensing. So again, I think it's a great model for everybody to go forward with, and we're excited about this. A couple more things about Cloudian here. We are the #1 object storage solution, independent object storage solution provider in the world. We have more than 500 customers globally. We are the most compatible to Amazon's S3 API set. I believe it's about 98%. And we do offer a 100% written guarantee that we will be compatible as new feature functionality comes out. So really, that allows you as a service provider to rest assured that your customers' applications that are integrating with the S3 service that you're providing will do so seamlessly, and you don't have to worry about all of those support and integration costs. With that, I think I'm going to hand it over. Oh, actually, one more housekeeping item, and I know Jen said it a couple of times, but I will remind everybody, if you stick around to the end, we will be giving away a pair of AirPods today for the best question that is asked. So please stick around to the end, ask those questions, and with that, I'll hand it over to Grant.
Yeah, so just want to say that most of you are familiar with Ingram Micro. Most of you are partners today, but I just want to reiterate and re-message the value add that you have with the partnership with Ingram Micro and being Cloudian a new vendor to our partnership here in Canada. Just want to stress the value add that we are here to support you. We're here to enable you and to ensure that your business and everything that has to do with also your cloud is successful. So Grant, I guess we can move on to the bulk of the webinar.
Sure. Thank you, Chad. Just showing you one more slide about the VMware VCPP program. Cloudian is now part of that. We are available, our software is available to you from VMware and Ingram Micro. And the idea here is just to highlight that this is available today. So what we're going to talk about today is all real and happening now, and let's get started with our great story together here with Ingram Micro and VMware. So a great way to start out is to say, why does this really matter? Why should you care? And we like to highlight feedback that we have from our hundreds of cloud provider partners already, even before we started working with VMware. And these are some of the top challenges that we keep hearing about. Of course, there's just a nonstop growth of data. IDC predicts that's going to go up to from about 33 exabytes to about 175 exabytes in a few short years. So, of course, where are you going to put the data? The storage costs are just crazy when you're trying to store that much data as an enterprise organization, and that's a real opportunity here for cloud providers to actually flip that and take advantage of scale. Certainly around that data, there's regulation and other requirements for compliance and privacy. How do you protect that data? And we'll talk more about that. That turns out to be the biggest challenge. There's malware, ransomware attacks almost every minute around the world. And the need to protect that data while keeping that available for very fast recovery is a real need. All this is very complex. The infrastructure gets more complex, but yet we need to simplify that. So how do you do that? You need a scalable architecture. You need security, which goes along with that protection. And then, of course, wouldn't it be nice to have that all available as an integrated solution? According to some recent surveys, of course, what sort of cloud services are useful, and it turns out the data protection is one of the highest here. So you see on top the data backup and archive being very high and very close to that. Number two is data recovery. So this area is ripe as a market opportunity here for the cloud providers. Another view of that, of course, 74% of the respondents use cloud backups for their on-premise workloads, and that's actually growing. 23% of backups are expected to be in the cloud this year. So it's a very good fit, a great opportunity, especially in light of the surge in growth of that data volume and the need to protect it, and with all those regulatory and other compliance requirements. So what does that look like for cloud providers in terms of market opportunity? Overall, just for the storage services piece, that's a $60 billion market worldwide in just a few short years. By 2023, 32% annual growth. Last year it was $20 billion. It's going to triple by 2023. That's just incredible, but that's real according to IDC, and that's an opportunity here to take advantage of for everyone. If I just look at the data protection piece of that, that's about $15 billion today. And most of that, the $7.4 billion for backup and recovery and the $2.8 billion on the bottom of that slide, that really highlights two-thirds of that opportunity, the data management, the backup and recovery. And that's another validation here that this is real, this is important, and available today for your customers and your prospects. So what we want to highlight today for you is the new set of these revenue-ready services available out of the combination of Cloudian running in your VMware environment. And that is anything like storage as a service, the S3 compatible storage as a service. This is what you know of, say, from AWS, to adding your favorite backup with that. That could be a Veeam, that could be Rubrik, could be Commvault, could be Veritas. So that becomes backup as a service, archive as a service related to that, which is just backup with more retention, and so on. We're going to talk more about the Ransomware Protection-as-a-Service as a spotlight, because that's really in the news all the time. And the most recent one on the bottom of the list, Office 365 Protection-as-a-Service. I'll just mention that many people believe that Microsoft backs that up. They do not. That's another great opportunity to protect all that Office 365 data. So you see that on the right side here. This really cuts across all market segments. So anywhere where there's data-intensive applications, where there's lots of data, these are new storage-based services opportunities here. Okay, so I mentioned the VMware Cloud Provider Program. This is what all the excitement is about. And kind of a good view of that on this slide, it just shows you that until a recent VMware Cloud Director did not have anything for object storage, which is really where Cloudian is playing with VMware. So today, thanks to VMware, you now have an integrated object storage offering from VMware. And that's based on the Cloudian software that I'll be talking about. And so that's now completely integrated. It's available, it can be provisioned, and so forth with your very familiar Cloud Director interface, provisions and deploys just like vSAN, except it's the object storage. And so what is object storage? Well, object storage is the other kind of data. It's really for your unstructured data, things like video, non-transactional data is a good way to think about it. And I'm just showing you this slide here with these logos. These are all these companies that use object storage today. So if you're not familiar with it, it's been around for a long time, and it's increasingly important with regard to data. And one more view of that, if you think about data in your primary storage, like vSAN, or like Pure, or NetApp, or EMC, that's really block storage, file storage. That's about 20% of the data universe. 80% of data out there today is unstructured. It's what we call capacity data. And that's object storage, and that's what Cloudian does best. And you see on the right, these are great use cases for object storage. I talked about data protection and storage services, but there's also machine data like Splunk and Elastic, NAS offload, which is basically keeping your primary storage balanced, video surveillance, bioinformatics, and so on. So that's the opportunity here. I'll just mention that most of the growth of data is the unstructured data. It's actually not the primary storage, it's the capacity data. That's where the growth is in the market. So what's the market opportunity therefore look like? Again, it's really about these use cases. All of these use cases here take advantage of the object storage platform here from Cloudian that's now integrated with VMware Cloud Director. And each of these can be its own service, in fact. Another way to look at this, why use object storage, on the left, you see here, this is very, very scalable storage, very dense. Imagine 1.5 petabytes in a 4U appliance, and you can scale that up. All of this gets managed as one single global namespace, multiple locations, and many other features. But here it's really about scalability as you grow the data. Looking at the center of the slide here, because Cloudian is, as Terry said, the industry's leading S3 compliant object storage, there's an ecosystem of applications out there that are S3 based, and they really cut across all areas of software, whatever this application is for your vertical. They talk S3, that means it'll work perfectly with the Cloudian software. And of course, on the right side, we're showing you the economics, and I'll talk more about that in a little bit. But under a penny a gig per month, that compares to public cloud storage, for example, that AWS S3 storage. So that's about 3 times more expensive on average. And of course, traditional enterprise being over 3 cents per gig per month. So great economics here. That means these services can be highly profitable. So what's in it for the VMware cloud providers? As I said, it's kind of a very big opportunity here that continues to grow. Simple management with the integration in VCD, and of course this is available today through Ingram and VMware. Very important as well, it's a consumption-based purchase, meaning you only pay for what you use. And that's important because you don't have to buy more than you need. Okay, so a little bit more about the object storage platform and what that looks like. As Terry said, VMware selected Cloudian to be the first object storage offering from VMware. Scales here to an exabyte, and as I mentioned, this is really multiple locations, so you can have tenants anywhere, and it works seamlessly. Let me just keep going here on the slides. So integration with VMware Cloud Director looks like this. So if you're looking at it, it's pretty seamless. It just shows up in the interface. Very familiar workflow, as I said, like vSAN. Couple of different deployment options. You can deploy this and run this within VCD. There is a plugin for VCD available from VMware called the Object Storage Engine, or VMware Object Storage Engine. You see there's a little box on the left within VCD. That makes it seamless with the Cloudian software. On the right side, we're showing you this also runs without VCD. So if you have, even if you have other VMware software, it works fine without VCD. It works the same, it's priced the same, it runs the same, and instead of using the VCD interface, you simply use the Cloudian user interface for that. And whether it's with or without VCD, you can run this in your existing cluster. So if you're just getting started, you can use your existing hardware and begin that way. You can also run this within Cloudian's own appliances, and you can mix and match that. It's very flexible. You can run within a VM. You can run it on bare metal. So let's get into the new services and show you again the opportunity here and what that looks like. So the first one, easy one here, is the storage as a service. So we've heard from a lot of cloud providers that some of them are in fact just reselling AWS S3, and they're not making probably more than 5 points on that. Instead, consider Cloudian software from VMware and Ingram Micro running in your own environment and with around 50 points of margin. It's the same S3. It supports the same S3 applications. It's just from you in this case instead of something else. So it's really S3 storage as a service. You can provision that for various S3 application workloads, whether it's a large data lake for your Splunk environment, or it's just data for backup, data for archive, and so on. And there is that backup as a service, archive as a service. Again, this can work with Veeam or Rubrik or Veritas in your environment. We already do this with the S3 connectivity with these and other backup companies. This can be tailored, as I'll talk about in a minute here, to meet various requirements or SLAs. And that might be, for example, for a disaster recovery service. So you can deploy the backup with multiple DR sites, including your tenant site. You can even make your tenant site the recovery site instead of your own site. This can be multiple data centers. This can be multiple locations, including, we're showing here, public cloud. So public cloud, for example, if you're using AWS Glacier as a DR location, that works well. And again, with that single global namespace with Cloudian Hyperstore, you've got a unified visibility of all that data wherever it is, and therefore unified control and management that goes along with that. I mentioned Splunk. There's also Elastic. This is big data as a service running as another workload. Office 365 as a protection as a service. This is something we keep hearing about. This is a huge opportunity given the number of organizations that run Office 365 today. They need that data to be protected. That's not just Exchange, but it's also SharePoint and the other data that goes along with that. And again, all of these services can be packaged and promoted and sold out of this same platform. That's the very nice part of it. It's that simple. It's really how you like to do that. So let's do a little spotlight on probably the most popular service these days, which is the Ransomware Protection-as-a-Service solution. Ransomware is in the news all the time these days. I'm sure you've seen or read about some of these attacks. If you get one of these, or your customer gets one of these, it's almost too late because what's happened is the attacker has encrypted the data and holding hostage the data in exchange for the ransomware. It's really the fastest growing malware threat, according to people who track this stuff. And it's really targeting all types of users. It's public sector organizations, such as the City of Atlanta, $2.6 million to recover. It's also, in this case, this is the Colorado Department of Corrections, I believe, another ransomware attack. Oh, that's the Transportation Department, excuse me. 1.5 million. You also have TravelX, which is this year, $6 million in ransom. And that's just the ransom piece. Does not include the impact to their business, which they had to shut down. So, and I believe they're tracking this every 14 minutes here. The latest was just a few weeks ago, ransomware gang attacks. Asked $42 million from a New York law firm. That actually started at $21 million until the law firm said no thanks, and then they doubled the ransom request, and I think they got paid off at $42 million. So really, companies cannot afford to be held hostage here, and that's, again, the opportunity to help protect them, to provide a gold standard of protection against these sort of threats. The World Economic Forum says that ransomware is a top 5 risk to the world economy. Many attacks per day. I think I read every 14 minutes. And of course it's growing, and there's a huge cost to these businesses and organizations, and it's really not going to stop. So what's the problem? Yes, there's training and security awareness by these organizations. Yes, they have a firewall. Yes, they even do the backup. But there's not enough protection with all of that, including Now the hackers are going after the backup copy, and that's really the last line of defense if you think about it. So what do you need to stop that? You need a very durable and hardened what's called the worm storage target, read once, write many storage target, and that's where Cloudian and VMware come in here. Implementing an immutable file system with the underlying worm storage will make it watertight. So immutability is the key here for your data. That means you can't change it, you can't touch it, you can't access it. So whatever is happening with ransomware, they cannot touch it. And that's what Cloudian is now supporting. That we're doing that with S3 Object Lock, which is a new S3 feature, and that just makes that completely safe and keeps the hackers out and the data protected. The way this is working here, and we're showing this off with this slide with Veeam, which also supports the S3 Object Lock, is the backup is initiated just as a regular backup workflow, and backs that data up with the Object Lock enabled into the Cloudian storage. And once that is done, it's all set. So it's really an end-to-end Object Lock capability for that warm storage, protection against ransomware and other malware threats, and you have that data completely protected. Another view of how that works, if I start in the upper left here, you back up the data, or your customer backs up the data with this service, just as they would anyway. They set it up, they create the bucket, they enable that with the Object Lock. On number 2, on the top right, the data is locked. Number 3, we're showing a malware attack with ransomware. Cannot get in, cannot access it. In fact, no one can access it unless you have the proper credentials to read from there. But the data is untouched, and if everything else, even if everything else is attacked and corrupted or missing or encrypted, you have this clean copy for restore. So that's the beautiful part of this. So the protection is part of your regular backup flow, nothing different, no manual steps. It just works seamlessly. But that's not all. So Object Lock is important from the software side. At a system level, we also want to tell you about the data immutability as verified by U.S. government certification testing. I think this will work in Canada too. And that's things like the SEC Rule 17A-4 that just basically certifies the worm storage is real and it works. I'm not going to read the whole list, but I will highlight the FIPS 140-2, the common criteria EAL2, and the FedRAMP references here. These are all higher level of security certifications that have been confirmed and validated with this Cloudian object storage platform. So even if you're not the U.S. government, this is still valuable for you today. And I'll also mention there's some certs in EMEA as well, very similar. And the hardened storage piece includes the secure shell, the integrated firewall, and very important, the role-based access and the IAM access controls as well. That really keeps out the wrong people even from getting started. So what's it look like? So all in one view here, this is your VMware Cloud Director with Cloudian Object Storage and your other services and resources running, the Veeam running as well in that environment, providing that end-to-end protection for the backups, for the archives, and that's how simple it is. So that's V10, version 10. And again, this works across the tenants, across the data sets. And by the way, just mention here that there is a current promotion running with Cloudian, Ingram Micro, and VMware, which is a no-cost license for the object lock capability that goes along with Hyperstore. This is normally a $15,000 US value that is no cost for the cluster, for the lifetime of the cluster, available through the end of July. And that only requires a minimum of a 200 terabyte commit for this, so you can get started pretty low capacity and get the benefit of all that object lock and protection capability I just went through. Okay, quick look at the service economics here. I mentioned these were high margin services. If we just compare this with, say, AWS, just the software, S3 compatible software. On the right side, you have AWS at their published price of 2.1 cents per gig per month. There's also always some extra charges, typically for egress, but they have other fees too. And that's within zones, that's from on-prem to the cloud, and we estimate that at around 35 cents, so you have about 2.5 cents per gig per month. And let's compare that on the left to the Cloudian offer with VMware. It's going to be about half of that. That's the storage hardware, whether it's your own or the Cloudian appliance. It's the software and it's the operating cost, a little bit of overhead there, but around a 50% margin for cloud providers, much less than the AWS offering. So you're able to offer that at a very competitive price and still make 50% margins on that service. So I think I missed a slide there. Here we go. So what does that look like from a service offering point of view? Really, it's the same set of costs and view with the addition of the backup software. So whether it's the Veeam you're doing for ransomware protection or you're just using it for backup and archive, you just add that, and now the profit potential, say, if you're offering that, say, for 20 cents per gig per month, there's about an 8 cent, almost 9 cent gig per month profit margin potential there with that. So very competitive, very attractive service offering, and again, this works across all the data, all the different use cases that you have. So just one more slide here on Cloudian. Certainly we have handouts and attachments I encourage you to take a look at. And obviously for more information, you can go to Cloudian.com, where we talk more about the software and all the various capabilities. But just some highlights here. We talked about the S3 compatibility, very important, increasingly important. That's because a lot of the guys have rewritten their applications in S3 because of the kind of default standard as a cloud connectivity that's thanks to AWS there. So they want to work with the public cloud, and it therefore will work perfectly with this object storage. Multi-tenancy, including QoS and billing, I'll highlight that. That's very important for cloud providers. The Cloudian Hyperstore was designed from the beginning with the multi-tenancy native to the software, so that's complete separation with individual policies for QoS and billing built in. So that's a way to set up these tenants and have them all operate independently. Moving across to the right here, modular scalability to an exabyte, and that's really one location, multiple locations whatever, and that's non-disruptive scaling. So you can add a node or add a site, and everything continues to operate. Built-in data protection, we talked about that, but I'll also tell you about the storage level data protection, which is for your storage deployments. And depending on the size of your deployment, there are erasure coding and replication factor policies that you may flexibly deploy with that. So how do you keep from losing data at a storage level? That's the erasure coding, and it really is unique in the market because you can mix and match that across nodes, across sites. So that's erasure coding, say, in your rack or across locations. You can even replicate while you're doing that. So this is important not just for protection, but also to keep the costs down. Many other ways of doing that require the same protection scheme, and here you can actually mix and match that depending on the level of data durability that you want to do. And actually Cloudian can go up to, say, 14 nines of data durability, and maybe higher if you have even more nodes there. So bucket level granular management is available for these and other policies, just to highlight a few of the features. I'll also mention that Cloudian support comes with the software, so when you deploy the software, that cost, that price that you're paying to VMware includes support. There's a nice little brochure about what's included there. And how to get started. Really quite simple. It's as simple as this chart here. Just decide your level of capacity that you're committing to. And this is in your VMware materials, and also Ingram Micro can tell you more about this. But 200 terabyte minimum. There is a third-party agreement that just, I think that's one page that just gets signed. You get the quote. Ingram Micro then provides the contract, and the fulfillment comes quite easily. The software comes from Cloudian. The object storage engine for your Cloud Director comes from VMware, and that's really it. There are some professional services as well available optionally from Cloudian to help with all that, but it deploys quite simply. And here's a view of what that pricing is in terms of those VMware points there. There's also a reminder here about the special offer for the Object Lock Worm license that's available here. But the more capacity you deploy, in other words, the higher the storage level, the lower the effective price. It gets quite attractive there. And this is reported on a monthly basis back to VMware. And again, it's paid for in VMware points. So I think with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Chad. Over to you.
All right. Thank you, Grant, for providing all that information. So just to reiterate what Grant has been speaking about very quickly, as he mentioned, 5-step process, pretty seamless. And the first thing that you really need to do is just pretty much contact Terry or myself, and we'll start to get that process started with you. And then just to wrap things up, further information about Cloudian and the VMware Cloud Provider Program. Any other information, you could go to the landing page at cloudian.com/VMware. If your technical team, engineers, need some validated technical documents, it's also available there. We do have a YouTube video that explains more on the Cloudian and Veeam integration. And further additionally, as with the technical pieces and training, all Cloudian training is available through the VMware Wire platform and also VMware's Learning Zone. And then as a high-level summary again, just remember, adding Cloudian to your business does offer new high-margin, revenue-ready solutions. So even though you don't have a customer today, just be rest assured that you do have Cloudian in your environment. It's up and ready. You have unstructured data there that you could offer to your customer tenants. So whenever you do have tenants that need that solution for Cloudian, you're up and ready. Again, it's VCD integrated. I know a lot of you folks do already run vCloud Director in your environments. So as seamless as it gets, Cloudian is the platform and solution to integrate into your vCloud Director environment. And again, it is now available. Cloudian is now available in the program with Ingram Micro and VMware, so just reach out and we'll be happy to help. And as Terry and Grant have been communicating in this webinar, that Cloudian is the #1 storage-based solution globally. And with that, thank you for joining today. I'll pass it off to Jennifer.
Perfect. Excellent. I would like to thank Chad, Terry, and Grant for their time today. So our first question is, I'd like to get started, but I don't have VMware Cloud Director deployed. Can I still deploy Cloudian's object storage and start offering the services?
I can take that. The answer is absolutely yes. In fact, it's you can even find some room in your hardware cluster and get Cloudian software as a free trial even to run as a VM and spin up some nodes and try it out. So you can do that, and you can even use that commercially to sell the services from, and just expand as you need, as you need more. So start small, start easy, and go from there.
Perfect. Thank you, Grant. There's another question. There are multiple free offerings out there that directly compete against Cloudian. What sets Cloudian apart, and what can I tell the executive team why it's important to invest in a paid product such as Cloudian rather than utilizing something free?
I'll take that one, Jennifer.
Yes, go for it.
Sorry, Grant, I'll grab this one. Thank you, sir. You know what? I have to take this one because one of my favorite sayings is, if it's free, it's for me. But I always end up getting burned. So I was a customer prior, looked at the same thing, had to make the same excuses to the executives or same decisions to the executives. I will say this. It's really about feature, functionality, support, management, scalability. And what I mean by that is we typically see in the freeware versions, they don't scale to meet the requirements of a service provider like yourselves. We also see that feature functionality is always limited or drastically behind the times. We've also seen a lot of customers lose data on free versions and move over to us as the resolution. And really it just comes down to there's no support or very limited support. There's just lack of integration with our technology partners, like what we've talked about today with Veeam. There's only 2 providers in the world doing this right now with Veeam, with Object Lock. That's AWS, and that's Cloudian. You're not going to see that from these freebies anytime soon. So I think, at the end of the day, it really comes down to, your money goes towards support with us versus your money goes towards supporting your customers when their data is lost, when your object storage solution fails. We've really taken a lot of consideration into how we've built our platform and designed our platform. To build it just like a public cloud offering. We typically see with these freebies that they're just they're nowhere near there. Hopefully that answers the question.
Awesome.
Can I add
Thank you, Terry?
just a few other advantages here? So I'll just highlight the multi-tenancy that is built into the software. Very important if you're a cloud provider, and that's fairly granular at the tenant level. And finally, we're talking about VMware environments here. VMware looked at everything, and they picked Cloudian as their first storage offering. Some of you might be familiar with the other offerings, including the free ones. They were not selected. So there's a reason why Cloudian is your choice here.
Awesome. Thank you, Grant. We do have another question. I understand how the storage is used for one or more of these services, but can Cloudian storage also be shared with my other S3 applications?
I can try that one too. The answer is yes. In fact, that's a great question because we're talking here about data protection and these other services, but if your customer has another application, data-intensive application, let's take the Splunk example. The storage that is deployed here that's done with Cloudian can be effectively shared. That storage pool is available to slice up across tenants and across these different application workloads. So you get great scale benefits. That's where the economics come in as you add more and more tenants and more workloads, sharing that storage. You're not over-provisioning it, but you are basically sharing that platform and leveraging it, and that's where the scale benefit comes.
Perfect. Thank you, Grant. We do have another question. Is data immutability for backup protecting from ransomware where the ransomware trigger may back up a copy of a encrypted server? So I'll read it again. Is data immutability for backup protection from attack where the ransomware trigger may back up a copy of a encrypted server?
Let me try that one too. I'm going to say no. The ransomware trigger may do something to some data that it can get to, but if it's the case where we have the object lock example, where the object lock is enabled on the backup copy, there is no possible way that that data can be touched or accessed or changed. It's immutable, and that's really the gold standard here. So whatever the ransomware is trying to do, it cannot get to it. I hope that I'm answering the right question.
I'm going to add a little piece there to that, Grant. So I hope this adds to the answer as well. What we're seeing a lot of in the industry today is a lot of conversations around air gap. What a lot of customers start to consider is the worm or object lock functionality by locking that backup down and making it immutable. No one can adjust it, change it, etc. It really starts to play into their air gap strategy. Obviously, any data, and I think to answer the question maybe a little bit more directly, any data that has been encrypted prior to the backup, it would still be backed up encrypted, but the point here with object lock is to provide that backup fully locked down, not able to be encrypted. As Grant mentioned earlier on, we're now seeing that a lot of these attacks are going after backup data sets and encrypting those backup data sets. So they've encrypted your production, they've encrypted your backup, you have no way back. What Worm really provides you is something very similar to an air gap type of solution. Jennifer?
The tail of that, a new question just came in. Do we need the Worm licensing for gaining the immutability abilities?
Yes, you do.
Perfect. It looks like that's all the questions. I would like to thank again Chad, Terry, and Grant for their time today, and to our audience for joining us as well. This is going to conclude our webinar, New Cloud Service Opportunities with S3 Object Storage and VMware Cloud Director. Thank you again for joining us, and with that, we will hopefully see you next time. Thank you.